Everybody, and welcome to Good Times the Morning After Show. I'm your host, Roy Pogrzewski, one of the partners here. I'd also like to thank our beer sponsor, All-in-One Digital Media, Jeremy McPherson. Thanks again for the beer sponsor. It is Stella Artois, and I did have Stella Artois, but I think one of my partners last night after the Alex Biron show, against my warnings and heatings, drank the other Stella Artois. So I'm going to drink a Pilsner Urquell, which is also a great beer. It's a Czech beer from Pilsen, Czech Republic. It's one of the first Pilsners in the world, so not too bad. And our Stella Artois is, of course, a beer brewed in 1366, originally as a Christmas beer in the place where I got my master's, Leuven, Belgium, which, so I have a strong tie to Stella Artois. But other than that, I'm going to start off before I introduce our guest today, Brian Dawydiuk, very funny guy, very talented, very creative guy. I talked to him one day and I said, let's start writing web series and producing web series for YouTube. And I think he agreed that might be fun. So, without further ado, just a weekly recap. So on Wednesday we started with our Avengers Harry Potter trivia. We had 6 people show up. So not terrible considering in other previous weeks we've had a few people show up. But it was good because everyone played one-person team. We had a lot of fun. Thursday night we had our open mic comedy night. Please continue to share. We had some great new comics hit the stage. It was a good turnout, and we just want to keep promoting local comedy, and we want to keep promoting new comics going on stage and maybe doing something a little courageous but also a little fun. Then Friday night we had the Bridge City Boys. They're comedians that have been in this industry here in Lethbridge for quite some time. That's Brent Hutchinson, Connor Christmas, and Sully KP. And of course Sully KP hosts some of our shows and still does some comedy on stage here. So it was really cool to have them. And then Alex Biron, our headliner on Saturday night, came and did a bit of an act there too on Friday night to promote the Saturday show. So that was a really exciting event to have happen here at Good Times. And then on Saturday we had headliner Alex Biron, who performed on opening night as part of our comedy collective. There was some good turnout and just some great comedy. He did a great job. He's a very talented comedian, so we were very honored and humbled to have him on our stage here at Good Times. Definitely an up-and-coming comedian to look out for, which is really exciting. Next week we've got Renee Manners, and tickets are already selling really fast. It's the Hot Valentine's show. I don't think she'd mind me saying that she is going to hit things Valentine's heavy, so make sure to get your date night packages. Come on out here to Good Times and see Renee Manners. I think she's going to put on a good show for everybody. And she was the comedian I visited up in Fort McMurray a couple weeks ago, so that's very exciting. But without further ado, I'm going to invite my guest to the show today. Wonderful new comic. He's a math teacher by trade, comedian by night, which is really exciting. So I want to introduce my guest, Brian Dawydiuk. Brian, hey.
I feel like this would be a little bit different with the studio audience.
Well, one day, when the budget comes in, we're going to have a studio. I'm going to play some studio audience.
Oh, there we go.
That might actually be a good idea, like have people just sit there and have a beer while they watch us.
Yeah, let's get those 3 people off their computers and here having a beer.
It'll be like, giveaway for you, and you get a giveaway.
I could afford to buy around there.
Give them a beer cozy. So Brian will crack. You get the Stella. Brian provided the Stella Artois glasses today, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, one of my partners, like I said, drank one of the Stella. At least they left one. They knew that the guest needed their Stella. I guess that's somewhat compassionate. But still kind of like, yeah, cheers. I'd say that's still kind of douchebaggery. But I think that's an old Shakespeare term.
Douchebaggery, I think that is, it's like Hamlet or something.
So Brian, let me bring in here. You're relatively new to comedy.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, about 7 months doing it.
To like stand up like on stage.
The first time I ever did stand up was actually about 5.5 years ago as like a bucket list thing. So I did 5 minutes, it went well, but I just assumed like most of the people that were there was at the Owl open mic, and it was just like check it off, like things that I thought were funny, and I've always loved stand up and didn't think anything of it until last year in September. My teaching partner was talking about our option classes for junior high, and we had like a block that wasn't filled, and he just threw stand-up comedy as a potential option
Like an option for
junior high kids. Yeah.
no way.
And so
That's amazing.
I thought he was joking, but then like the two other teachers that were there were like, "That's a good idea." So
Wow.
I started a stand-up comedy class, having done stand-up comedy one time 4 years earlier. Seems like pretty applicable, right? I'm definitely qualified. And so then I went that Christmas and did my second ever show at the Owl again, and it went well. Just to have it filmed, show the kids like I've been on stage or whatever, and then didn't go up again until June. So I don't really consider myself, like, June is really the start date for me.
When you started getting more regular.
Yeah, so I made a deal with the kids, like if we had a performance at the school and the kids did actually really well. And I said, if you can get over your stage fright and whatever, I will go up and do stand up again. And then that one went well, and that was like a one-off thing at the Slice, and then went to the Owl a week and a half later and
Wow.
kind of got the bug. So
when you get in there and you start telling jokes and all that stuff, like what's your biggest fear on stage? Like what prevents you? What makes you nervous about it?
I have no problem making myself look foolish. I do that on a daily basis. It's not even like the embarrassment thing. I just, my fear is freezing up. So like forgetting what I wanted to say. So I still end up with like a little kind of cheat sheet that I'll put either on like the stool or whatever. And I've seen, watching Netflix especially, you never see them do that until I figured out they probably have it taped on something when they do that little quick water break. They're really just cheating. They're not that thirsty. But yeah, that's my biggest fear is just like literally freezing up. But I don't know. I wouldn't say like I still get a certain amount of nerves before I perform, but I think that should be natural.
Well, like you said, like before we head on the show here, you talked a bit about crowd control to some degree, and never knowing your audience or how a different comic brings out different audiences.
Yeah, so I was here last night for Byron Biron.
Byron, I think it's Alex. I say Biron because of hockey.
I thought the same thing. I know he was introduced differently.
It's Alex Byron.
Byron, yeah. There we go. But yeah, he was really, really good. The crowd was like more different than any other crowd I've seen here. A lot of people were chatty. Some like amongst the table, but a few people would just like yell out things to the stage.
Just random things.
Which is a big faux pas if you're at a comedy show, because like no one came to see the person in the third row, right? They came to see the person on stage. But he handled it really well, and I'm finding actually doing comedy has ruined stand-up for me as an audience member, because I'm sitting there like not actually trying to be entertained, like almost taking notes, like I'm scouting or something.
Right,
so like,
right.
what he was doing was sort of brilliant in my mind, where he was not chastising, but like he was talking to the people that were stepping out of line, kind of putting them in their place, and then he would like back off just enough to make it so it wasn't mean-spirited. Yeah. So he's basically saying like, "Shut up, but I like you still. Shut up." And it was really, really good. So
see, I find that really interesting what you just said there, because like you look at Mike Dammer the week before, and he comes out, and you're like, "Don't pick on me, please," right? And then he just picks you out and hammers home. Whereas here, I think Alex drew a crowd that was a bit more like, "I want some attention."
I think, yeah, it was a younger crowd, so I don't know, because he was one of the younger people in the showcase, maybe that's why a lot of the 20-somethings came out, and I'm sure a few of the comments were a little bit influenced by what they'd been drinking that night, but yeah, like I said, he did a great job, and Damber I've seen as well, like his whole thing is crowd work, and he's brilliant at it, so, but
well, and when you look at kind of last night and like the way people interact, like I know, opening up for Alex Byron was actually a former local guy, now in Calgary, Connor Christmas. I believe you said Jordy Bott also went on stage.
Jordy did a guest spot, yeah.
He did a guest spot. We love guest spots. We love when some of our local comics come down, and then you've done a guest spot before.
I did.
Yeah.
It was for Charles Andrew Payne.
Charles Andrew Payne, yes.
Strangely, I didn't know how I don't know how the industry works, right? So I was just hanging out. Lunch Sheet was opening for him, so I was in the green room just kind of BSing, and Charles was like, "Do you want to do 5 off the top?" And I was like, "Why do you want to impose?" Like,
yeah.
being so Canadian about it. No. But you realize, I think, you know, anytime you get stage time, you take stage time. So
Yeah.
if especially if the headliner's going to offer it to you, like, you're definitely not stepping on toes then. So
When you get paid show time versus like stand-up time, those are different times. Because the crowd's expectation when they've paid is a product.
yeah,
When you haven't paid, you're like, okay, I can walk out anytime.
at an open mic or something.
Whatever,
Like that.
yeah. You know, so I mean, I can appreciate, that's pretty cool when a headliner's like, hey man, take 5. It's like, it's a different take 5, you know,
Yeah.
it's get out there.
And it ended up being a really cool show because John was hosting and his set went well, and my set went well, and Lakshi's set went well. So it sort of like
It flowed.
it flowed really well. And I think it showed the type of comics that we have here in Lethbridge that, I mean, we can kind of compete with, you know, any of the Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver people.
Well, and I'm impressed, I'm continuously impressed by the level of comedy scene locally, like that's growing. Like when John started years and years ago, the industry had, you know, you would go to open mic night, it might be the same 6 comics. And on open mic, you can understand that they have to rehearse material. So you come out with many of your same jokes because it's about timing of the joke, not
Yeah.
the joke itself. Like, where's the pause?
There's an evolution to it.
Right,
Where
you know-
or little like add-ons and
Yeah.
side beats that you can find the more you tell the same.
Yeah, and the confidence to tell it, right? And nowadays, like even with open mic here, we get like really new comics who are just like, hey, can I try this out? And you're like, for sure, like it's a very intimate space, you know? And the people coming here are usually supportive of comedy.
Yeah, the open mics, like you're not gonna get heckled, you're not gonna get chastised or anything like that. Actually, I hosted the open mic on Thursday because the weather wasn't a big turnout in the audience, and there was a girl that was sitting there with her friends and saw her on her phone, and I kind of look over her shoulder, and she was writing a set, so she had never done stand-up before.
Wow.
She was watching what was going on. She's like, "This is safe, comfortable." So she went up and she, for someone that had never done it before, showed potential. Like,
Wow.
she like kind of owned the stage. Like, you know, her mannerisms and stuff were definitely beyond someone that has never done it before.
So she had the talent, she had the potential, she just needed the confidence.
I think, I mean, spending time and rewriting things and that end of things. I mean, it's the first time I look back at my first couple of shows and like it went well, but I'm so much better now.
Yeah.
You know, the same joke I told then, I'm telling you now, I'd be able to do it with a lot more confidence.
Right,
and
right.
kind of find added jokes where I wasn't before.
Well, hey, let me ask you a question then, because every comic, even myself, like I tell a lot of the comedians, I will only do stand-up comic like when I feel like it in a blue moon. I'll go up there, maybe tell a few jokes. I don't even know if they're gonna hit, but I like writing comedy. We had this conversation, and so like for me, like comics that inspire me are definitely like Jerry Seinfeld. I'm more of a clean comic kind of guy, you know, and so a lot of those like. Comics that do a bit more clean comedy are kind of hit my wheelhouse. For me.
Yeah.
I like all comedy, but I'm just saying it's.
I think there's something to be a clean comic. It takes sometimes a lot more skill because it's easier just to go for like the dick joke or the crass like whatever joke where you throw in a couple cuss words and you say something that is normally inappropriate and you'll get a response.
And
the response isn't always laughter, but
Right.
you're getting a response from the crowd.
And sometimes it's like awkward gasps.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
But there's definitely some comics that that's what they thrive on. They don't
Yeah.
want laughs, they want like the gasps.
gasps.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's almost sunny in Philadelphia when Mac was like, I don't want laughs, I want gasps. And they're doing like Nightman. I don't know.
Yeah,
if you've
yeah,
seen it. Yeah. So, who inspires you in the comedy realm?
Like in terms of famous comics.
Sure, like people that you look at and go, I'm taking this is interesting.
If there was one person that I would love to like sit down and talk about comedy, it's John Mulaney.
John Mulaney.
I love the way he writes jokes. He's generally pretty clean, but he can kind of go blue a little bit, and he just really well written. And for whatever reason, I think like there's a couple of jokes that he had that I had thought of a premise years ago, and when I see him craft it, I'm like, that is so much better than what I would have ever come up with for the same premise. So it's interesting seeing like I can see certain things that there's potential for with a joke, and to see someone at that level take that same thought and kind of blow it up, it's it's really cool.
No, hey, I appreciate that. It looks like we have people watching, no comments. That's my Facebook going up.
Oh, okay.
I would, I wish, feel free to comment and ask Brian a question. I'll come up and read it off to him. But if you have a question, you're watching or you tune in and you have a question for Brian, feel free to shoot one. That's what we're here for. But outside of that, going into comedy, what's the limit? What's the line for you? Where's the? Because you're a professional in an industry that I would say is very watched.
Yes.
Right, and so how do you navigate the world of comedy and the world of teaching?
It's, when you said teacher by day, comedian by night, it's basically, I put on a different hat. And I think there is an assumption or an agreement when you're at a comedy show at 9:30 at night that I may speak in a different way than I would at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in front of a class of junior high kids.
For sure.
So I think that there's that understanding, but I do have to, consider, things because, comedy is a hobby, teaching is a profession, and, at least for now, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But, I say that if my wife's watching, we probably have to talk when I get home. I had mentioned something about do I see her there? I don't know. But I mentioned something about if I was watching Alex last night and seeing the crowd work, I was like, okay, it's something that I would love to work on because if I ever go on the road, do a couple shows, that's all I said. And she looked at me like, no, you're not.
That's awesome.
So we'll see.
Well, it is true too. John certainly has to make sacrifices when he goes on the road. I went on the road with him up to Edmonton. He was going up to do a few shows, and I was like, "Yeah, man, I got nothing. I'll come up with you. Support my brother, right?" And we went up to this room called Chicago Joe's. It was Dambra's show. He was hosting it, and I talked to him when he came here.
That's like his home club then?
Well, no, I think he gets around everywhere, but he hosts regular comedy shows there.
Oh.
But it is if I was only down here and just saw Dambra every 6 months when he came, it was an eye-opening experience because that room is not a comedy room. But there was a lot of comics doing open mic, but the people there did not care that comedy was happening.
So you had to fight the crowd for...
Oh, without a doubt. And not even a crowd of regulars that's you're invading our space. And Mike was good because he'd come up there and just make fun of Chicago Joe's. And when he was here, I talked to him about it and we had a good laugh about it. But it was a funny room. There was no one there. And I thought, okay, there's got to be a lot of people there. And it was, but then we went downtown. The next day we were downtown Edmonton and there was John did some good rooms down there. But going on the road takes sacrifice, man. It's financial. You're usually going, you're not getting paid a lot, and you're staying in hotel rooms, and you're just trying to up your repertoire because it's like a CV. It's like going to a conference and speaking in a session.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you went, you spoke in a session. It doesn't matter how you got there, you spoke in a session.
And I think when I think of goals with comedy or whatever, it's still sort of a pipe dream now to think of taking the show on the road or something like that. But I think that there is potential too, if you talk about speaking at different things, just learning to be more engaging when you're speaking to a crowd that you don't know. As a teacher, I'm used to speaking to a crowd all the time, but that crowd knows me. So it's different when you go in front of a group and you have something to say,
Right.
you want them to listen, but you don't know them, they don't know you.
Well, and they also, there's the power dynamic of teacher to student in that kind of cohort. Whereas here, there's no dynamic. It's comedian to crowd. And oftentimes the crowd has a bit more power because they're the ones who have the laugh.
Well, they're the ones validating what you're doing.
Right.
I guess, to a similar extent, teaching, when I see a kid, go from a 60 to a 70, there's some validation there, but it's not instant.
Right.
You don't get it like that. Whereas in comedy, right away whether what you said hit or missed.
Well, people are coming out to be, they're coming out to be entertained. They're coming out to forget about their day.
Yeah.
Their life, what's happening. They're coming here to de-stress. And if they come here and get more stressed, tough day.
It shouldn't be a stressful experience coming out to a show, that's for sure.
Well, and you said something very interesting that I want to pick up on. You talked about comedy and teaching, a comedy class for students. Now, there's so many ways which we can take this, but isn't that like something that could be in a teachers' conference rather than the current controversy that just happened? You know,
the one in Calgary.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how that one slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, that was pretty, I couldn't believe it.
And I talked to colleagues about that. Was interesting to see like different perspectives, even like, you know, so if someone is released, so if our system lets someone out of jail for whatever reason, they got out on parole, whatever, at what point do we allow them to try to live a normal life without disrespecting the family of the victim, right?
Of course, I would say though normal life was a normal life before keynote speaking a massive conference.
For sure.
Or now is normal life putting you up there because of what you did.
And I think that's the optics of it.
Yeah.
Like his message, I think, was supposed to be about overcoming addiction
and overcoming murder.
Well, yeah. So I'm assuming that he would explain the murder via his addiction taking control and rewiring his brain or whatever. But at the same time, you're right. He wasn't doing keynote speeches before, so it does appear to be profiting off of
that tragedy,
and
a real big tragedy.
Yeah.
Right? And we're going off. I mean, this is good. It's all, we got a comment, but this is interesting when we go off. Me and Lux did it too, but it's kind of good. There you go, Jeremy. Jeremy from All-in-One Digital Media asked a question. And he asked you, yes, how do you pivot when the crowd isn't reacting well? So, wow. So how do you change it up when you know it's not going good for you on stage?
I'm still getting better at that. Because it's an uneasy feeling, and all of a sudden your brain's going a million miles an hour. But one thing that did help me is my wife. She's done theater for years. She was in New West Theater for about 10 plus years. She just did the Christmas show, so she had her big return there. It was great to see her on stage. But she told me, I'm trying to steal my beer. Oops. No, but she told me that because she would come out to a lot of my first shows now. Like she's seen most of my jokes now, so she doesn't come out as much, but she would watch someone who would have a joke miss and then kind of talk down about it. She's like, oh no, that wasn't very funny, or like kind of pointing out what the crowd already knows, and it seems sort of self-deprecating or whatever. And she said like you almost have to do the opposite. Like don't add fuel to that fire of that joke bombing. Either you own it.
You own that it bombed and move on.
And you move on, or you try to find like some little quick moment to have an unrehearsed comedy.
Right.
That space, but I'm just like even teaching. Like if I'm trying to teach something a certain way, and I look and the kids are just glass-eyed and not getting it, you have to be flexible. Like, it doesn't matter how much time you spend making that lesson plan or your set. If it's not working, you got to be flexible enough to scrap it and go to something else.
Well, and that's interesting that you bring that up because you're right. I've seen a lot of comics over the last little while. They'll do something that kind of hit and misses, and then they'll be like. Or not, like they'll put it on the crowd and be like, no one else agrees with me, okay, moving on.
And it's not that doesn't work, because sometimes you can save it with that, but I think for me, like hearing my wife say that, and it resonates with me, where it's like, you're right, like, why would I point out what they already know? So they didn't laugh, so they're not on my side, so me saying that wasn't funny is just going to make them more not on my side.
That's true, that's a good point, like when you put it that way, right? It's interesting because I've seen both sides of things. Like I've seen like comics be like, oh, and then you move on from it, right? And I think it's always tough. I mean, I've only done this maybe 4 times, and when I walked out there and said a joke that just like I have a weird one, but I went out there and I said it, and there's like no one.
I think you need to tell it right now.
Stone.
I think you say you have a weird one. We literally have 3 people watching, 4 people watching. They all want to hear this joke.
Well, I retired that joke years ago. It's been retired. It's never coming back. I put it to pasture, essentially. But going back to the thing, so couldn't comedy and education, like a stand-up comedy class, couldn't that teach youth a lot about confidence, a lot about public speaking?
That's essentially how we phrased it when we brought it to our administrators. It's not just about like telling jokes and getting laughs. It's about public speaking. Even like dramatic arts, like getting on stage, and like you might have a stage persona that is different than your regular persona.
Oh, hey Renee. Renee Manners is watching.
Hello.
Hey Renee. Renee will be on the show next week.
I am aware.
Oh, cool.
I was here when you just said that to everyone.
Oh, nice, nice. No, I said she was performing here next week, but she's actually gonna be on the show as well. So.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, continue with like the essence around comedy and teaching.
Yeah, so that class, I've kind of phrased it and used it as a way to just basically let the kids be creative and get over any fear of public speaking. So we try to do it small in the class, it's just their peers, which is sometimes tough because they're junior high kids and when they're nervous, they'll giggle and then everyone else giggles and it gets a little silly. But what I found last year when we had our year-end show, the kids stepped up and a lot of the parents that were there came up and they said, we thought we were just gonna have to politely laugh.
And it was actually funny.
A couple of the bits got like gut laughs from the crowd, which was like awesome to see, like 13-year-old kid telling a joke that he wrote or she wrote and getting 50, 60 people to laugh at it. So,
well, what a boost for a young person's self-esteem when you go on stage like nervous, obviously, and you go and tell jokes and like, yeah, the parents were like, oh man, there's some talent there.
So what we're doing for our project at the end of this term is the kids are going to roast me. So they're all going to basically do the same jokes that they tell in class but in front of their parents. So
the roast of Brian Dawydiuk, the teacher.
For them it would be Mr. Dawydiuk.
Mr. Dawydiuk.
Mr. D, but it's weird being in comedy as a teacher with the name Mr. D. It feels like I'm stealing that. I can't help it.
Right, Mr. D, yeah. Yeah, I worked in a school a long time ago in Regina, and they called me Mr. P. It seems like now that's
even funnier.
Well, yeah, Mr. P is pretty funny.
Like immature junior high kids on Mr. P.
Yeah, they probably had a lot of jokes about that. I was probably the brunt of many jokes, but yeah, I worked and it's always funny because no one could say Pogrzewski, so it's like, and I'm sure the same.
I messed up last name, which became a joke. My last name being Dawydiuk sounds close enough to David Duke, the KKK Grand Wizard or ex-Grand Wizard. It was funny when Quincy Jones was here, a comedian from Los Angeles, just in the green room. He heard my name when I was introduced, and that was the first thing that he thought of. But I didn't do that joke that day, and he's like, dude, I would open with that every single time. Because no one else can tell that joke. That's your joke. Like, who else has your last name? Like, very few, right? So
it's true. It's actually true. Here, I think, let's see if there's a question. Oh, yes, no. Okay, there's a comment. See you next weekend. So
okay.
That's going to be good. So, based on all that, I guess, another question that I always have for comedians that come on the show and like go on stage and that I see in the back room, because everyone's got a weird story of what drove them to comedy. And like 5 years from now, if you're on a different set, people are always interested. Like I talked to Newer Kidway and I asked him like what, or Tommy Malore who came and I asked
They were
him,
both great, by the way.
They were good, yeah. It was really, but it was like not so like for the level of comedians they are, it was not as attended as it should be.
I think they got kind of booked late, so it was kind of a short term in terms of promo or whatever.
Right,
But
and
if they come back, I highly recommend if we are able to get Newer back, by all means, everyone should come out and watch.
Without a doubt, and so based on that, I was gonna ask you the question of what advice would you give? So like new comics coming in, like they might go to you, hey Brian, like what advice do you have for me? I want to know, like what advice do you give to people?
I'm still in the process of taking advice, not giving it, but I think the best thing I would say to someone is if you've never done an open mic or anything like that, make sure you prepare. I've seen too many people with open mics where they go up and they almost use it as a crutch sometimes. Like, I didn't write anything, this is just like last minute. Well, you're just basically saying if you're not funny, you already have a pre-excuse for it, which I think as an audience member, I think it is kind of a cop-out. So if you've never done comedy before and you want to, I think make sure you spend the time actually writing the joke. Look for setup, punchline. You don't need to reinvent the wheel your first time. You don't have to be, crazy, new or different or anything like that, unless that's your personality. But I think just to get over that first fear of being on stage, just make sure that you're prepared.
Well, I think you said something very interesting there. You're still in the timeline of taking advice. Yeah. But I think that even comedians who are like 10 years in are probably still taking advice because it's like a journey of
it's like
constant
anything. Like I'm still learning how to be a better educator.
Yeah.
know, so it's professional development
Of
all
course,
the time.
yeah.
I think anything that you do, you can always get better. Like, you know, you look at the top athletes in the world, they're still practicing, right? Except maybe Allen Iverson, but he was unique. But
That's right.
like, you know, Tiger Woods still goes to the driving range
Yeah.
and hits a bunch of buckets of balls to try to work on his game. Like, it doesn't matter what level you're at, you can always tweak and improve and find things.
Of course,
So,
and that's what's interesting when you because advice, I think, from new comedians who've had maybe a couple years to really new comedians fresh off the thing, there might be more fresh advice at that level than like somebody who's like 15 years later and they give you the advice never quit.
yeah.
Don't stop believing.
Yeah.
They quote Journey.
If you're quoting Journey, I don't know if that's advice or just like name that tune, but.
Oh, here we have
another
quite a
question.
long comment here from Eric. What tips would you give someone who gets super nervous speaking in front of people? Any best practices for overcoming the fear? Picture them all naked? Question mark. Like, you know, like a,
That's cliche, I think. One thing I found here that helped, like the first soft open shows that you guys had, getting the stage ready. The lights here, if you stand like mid-stage, are so bright that you can't see the audience.
There's no one out there.
Which is strange because I think there was one where it was a pretty full house and I was a little bit nervous, and not being able to see the crowd is helpful in that sense, because I'm still like appearing to make eye contact. It's not like I have my back to the audience or anything like that. But I think honestly, if you can over prepare, that the stage right there, I think if you spend the time and wrote good jokes, or what you think are good jokes, and you'll find out when you're on stage. But the more time you spend prepping, I think the more you want to not bail out on yourself once you're up there, right? Because if you spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours trying to like memorize the set, or what I did for my first probably dozen shows is I would actually speak into my phone, just so I would know how much time it would be. Because if they say you want 5, like first time doing comedy, like, you got 5 minutes. I have no idea how long my jokes would take.
And you don't want to be redlighted immediately.
No, and you don't know if there's going to be a laugh break or whatever. So what I do is I just literally I read it, try to do it as much as the cadence as I'm going to have when I'm on stage, which is tough to replicate, but at least get an idea there. And I think for me at least, the more you prepare, the less that stage fright and that fear will be there.
Well, and I appreciate that question, Eric, because the first time I ever went on stage was at the Owl as well. And I remember I was going up there. My biggest thing was I loaded the room of, like, I had a room of friends. You will never fail in a room of friends.
Which helps too.
Yes, and I threw back. I was so nervous. I threw back, and I'm a public speaker. Like, I speak on reconciliation. I speak on a number of things. And here I am putting back tequila shots before Randy Webb called me up there. I run up on the stage and I'm like, and you just look out for the first time. It's the first time you like teach in a classroom. You remember that feeling?
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I'm in charge of this. Like, this is me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and that's why I agree with what Brian said with over preparation. The jokes that I did, I went over in my mind like I would studying for an exam in university. I was so prepared for the order I was going to speak, for how I was going to hit the punchlines. And because I was over prepared at work, when I was underprepared, I bombed.
Like anything.
Like anything, right? Like exactly like anything.
At open mics, I've taken jokes that are unfinished. They're just sort of a premise, and I'm thinking, once I'm on stage, I'll say something, see if I get a reaction, and then maybe think of like an add-on or a beat to it after. And my process, that doesn't work too well. Like, I feel like I need to have that joke refined before. Like, I'm not able to kind of write in the moment on stage. At least yet, I think that.
Or even right in the back room, be like, I heard something, I'm gonna write a joke.
Well, one of Cole's jokes, Cole Haug, he blew me away. We were up in Medicine Hat at an open mic there, and I said something, not the nicest thing to say to someone, but I said it. Actually, I won't steal his joke because it's not his joke. That was what I said. But like, anyway, we were out in the street, and I said this thing, and then we walk into the club, and Cole was first up, so it was no more than 2 minutes after what I said. Cole took that and turned it into like a minute-and-a-half bit.
Wow.
Which I was just like blown away. And like he'd already had like add-ons to it or whatever. Like, he's definitely thinking on his feet there, but that blew me away. And it was super impressive to see that.
Here, it looks like we've got another.
Yeah, I've been avoiding this because I saw the name.
Lakshmi, yes, hello. I'm thinking of getting a back tattoo of Mount Rushmore, but get this, The heads are musicians. What musician should I get? Is that an inside joke or is that?
I do have a back tattoo of Mount Rushmore with my 4 favorite musicians. I wouldn't even say my 4 favorite. The 4 most political musicians, and for some reason he's obsessed with this. So for you, I think you're definitely gonna have Lance Bass on there.
Lance
He'll
Bass.
be there for you.
Yeah, that's one. Very fine musician from the, was it the
He
NSYNC
was in
days?
NSYNC, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
And,
talented musician.
And I think you'll just have 4 Lance Basses on your back.
It's like 4 layers.
Just 4.
Let's think this through.
You can get like NSYNC, you can get old Lance Bass, you can have like the evolution of Lance Bass. But
I think he would have Donnie Wahlberg. There'd be
it's definitely gonna be boy bands for him.
Yeah, and probably not. What's the guy from 98 Degrees? Nick Lachey.
Nick Lachey.
There's 3.
I'm embarrassed that I know so many members of boy bands
Well,
right
you're
now.
an educator.
That's not why I know them.
And then the 4th one will be Posh Spice, and we'll just go from there.
Posh Spice.
Yeah.
I don't think Scary Spice are posh.
Really?
I think so. He's not very posh.
I have a Lux.
Have you seen what he wears around?
I have a Lux type joke to that, but I don't know if I should say it. Because you know his one joke where he's like, in my opening night, I won't say the joke, but Scary Spice might blend in too much.
It's very possible.
So we could get like a Posh or a Baby Spice.
And unlike Lux Sheet, I generally don't take my clothes off on stage, so you won't have to worry about mine. Like you put a little thought into yours, because you're an exhibitionist. Clearly.
Well, and he's the roast battle champion, defending champion.
I mean, there's an asterisk there. Like he planted the crowd with most of his people.
I mean, with most of his. Yeah, see, that's what you do on a roast battle. Just bring all your friends and just do it.
I mean, yes, he told good jokes and he was witty and all of these things. But let's be real. Like, if his mom and dad and cousins and step nieces or whoever else he brought there wasn't there, I don't know if it's the same result.
Well, here, final question on the Good Time.
Yes.
Oh man, he's got rebuttal on the Good Time Show. Second question. I want to start a minor career in poker and quit while I'm behind. How do I start?
Quitting while you're behind, I like that.
That was obviously an inside joke from the comedians.
Well, I used to play poker for a living.
Really?
Yeah, and so I found like in my life I kind of go in phases where I get very obsessive over things. So like high school, university, I loved basketball, and so I would like play all the time and work on my game that way, and then that evolved into poker, and then into golf, and now into comedy. So I find myself just whatever it is, I get very, very obsessive about. But for Lux Sheet, I've seen him play poker, and I don't know if there's any hope for him there. So I think you should take up like Go Fish or something.
All right. Well, poker's a very strategic game.
It is, yeah.
So
Although actually, the last 2 home games that he was at, he walked away a winner. So.
Wow. So maybe there is a career
if he
there.
can keep playing in like people's living rooms, then maybe he has a chance.
Well, okay. So we'll head with our final question of the show here. Those were some good comments from the crowd. We had some. That was our first time we had 3 questions from the audience.
Look at that.
Which was pretty amazing.
Bringing out the curiosity in people.
Yes. Oh, and the mysteriousness
That's it.
of who is Brian Dawydiuk.
I know a lot of people that saw the name, they're just like, I gotta see how you say this. They're tuning in just for that.
We're intrigued by this gentleman. Well, and so like, what's next for you in this? Like, are you just gonna be the stand-up guy? Are you gonna write some web series with someone in the fall?
Well, we talked about like for me, the process of writing. What was great about the first roast battle was it was a test in writing. You're given bios on 7 other people, and you need to write jokes that are clever, haven't been done, and you only had about a week to do it. And I like that kind of pressure, and it pushed me as a writer. But I've always said, like, if I write something and it gets a laugh, it doesn't matter if it's me that said it or if I gave that to another comic and they said it. So,
Right.
So to me, it's just my rush comes off of the thing that was in my head that I thought was funny related to an audience. I don't feel like I have to be like, fuel my ego with, it has to be me that tells it. So the idea of writing, a web series or something like that, I'm definitely into that idea. But yeah, I've unlocked this creative side of myself that I'm not sure. I should, it's probably always there. I just repressed it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm out of the closet creative.
Well, like I was saying too, like I've always dreamed of more writing web series. Like I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right? Letterkenny was good for a couple seasons.
Yeah, I think I only watched the first two.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of stopped after season 2. And I just saw on Crave. I don't subscribe to Crave anymore, but they have the Valentine's episode. Can't imagine how that went. But these web series were written by folks that just were they were funny, and I think that there's a lot of potential to, with the way that the internet has changed the game, to produce content.
Oh, for sure. I think you look at things, and a lot of the old guard. You look at music, for instance. Like once digital music started taking over, they're like, how are we going to make our money? Like, if people can just download things for free or stream it for free or whatever. And I think what you're finding is that the quality of musicianship has gone up because you can't just have this overproduced garbage that is selling records and then you go see them live and they can't do anything. I think if you're going to make it in the music industry today, you have to perform and be good live. And I think comedy is sort of having a renaissance right now with Netflix and everything like that. But if you have the goods, you have so many different mediums that you can use to let people know about you, which is exciting. Like 20 years ago, I'm sure you probably just had to grind clubs and hope to make it that way. But
well, and now you can produce your own content. Like even here with doing this idea, like you're like, that it's not good, it's not going to be viral but it's fun. It's putting it out there to a new media. Why can't comedians talk to comedians?
In cars getting coffee.
Well, that's Seinfeld's thing. And he brought in celebrities. I'm bringing in locals.
Local celebrities.
Yes. So he
Known
brought
by dozens of people.
I don't know Chris Rock, and I can't pick him up in a fancy car. My 2018 Tiguan though is pretty cool, but it's not as fancy as what they have. It's habanero. It's habanero. Brian. But anyways, and like his idea was his idea didn't just cut, like it wasn't like, oh, Seinfeld created talking to comedians.
No, I think what he did was he recognized that there's an audience for the process of comedy. People are like, what you see on stage, you can get behind the curtain.
That's right.
And find out like what are they really like when they're not like strutting their peacock feathers on stage for an audience. Like, are they always on or are they different people? And I think that's always fascinating for people.
It really is. Like I asked Mike Damber last week, I said to him like, you toured with Adam Sandler for 2 weeks. Like, was he always on? And he goes, no, he was actually quite chill. And he said, who always was on? Howie Mandel.
Really?
Yeah, that's what he said in the interview. And I'm like, this is great.
He's the same option. I heard the same thing about Robin Williams apparently. Like, he was just as like crazy attention-seeking off stage as he was on.
Well, and what's hard because like we just had that Bell Let's Talk Mental Health, and you brought up Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And like him being always on was like Chris Farley always being on.
Yeah.
It's like, where's the downtime?
It
And
could
we
be
don't see the
detriment to your
downtime.
mental health, for sure.
Yeah. Because like when you saw Adam Sandler's tribute to Chris Farley, like I teared up. Because I was a big Chris
for
Farley
sure.
fan. Yeah. And he reminded me of younger days when I just laughed relentlessly at Farley jokes.
Yeah.
But to have him sing so raw about him.
There's something about comedy that almost makes people with any sort of mental health issue gravitate, because it's almost like therapy. Like you can be exposed, you can say things in a funny way that at least it's out there. Like you can make a joke of like Alex Byron had a nice bit about Bill Let's Talk to.
Right.
I won't rehash his bit, but I thought
It's
it was
on
really
YouTube. I saw it on
Is it
YouTube.
okay?
Yeah.
It's really, really well written. And true. And I think that's what it is. You're saying, okay, here's something we're not supposed to talk about, or it's not easy to talk about. And you're at a comedy show, but so depression shouldn't be a subject that you can make jokes on. And I've written a couple jokes with it. I want to be able to extend it to be like a longer bit. But I think what's cool about comedy is it allows you to talk about things.
Yeah.
Be it race, be it gender issues, whatever issues there are in the world, you can talk about it openly and freely and really use free speech in that way.
Here we've got one more comment.
From
It's from Erica Gill. How do you balance family and work life with comedy life?
I think Lakshit just like logged into his wife's account to ask this question.
Oh yes, that's true.
I have a very loving and supportive wife that lets me go out and do these things. I think she sees, like, I've dealt with depression pretty much my whole life, and I think she sees when I am out doing things like comedy or even like golfing in the summer or whatever it is, when I have my outlet, it's better for my mental recognize that, which is great. But I think when I am home, I've tried to be a lot better at being present when I am home.
Well, and you making it, like, for me, I've met so many different people through being at John's shows, meeting comics, and being around here. It's almost like you meet a whole new family of people.
Yeah, like I'm definitely like the people I'm hanging around with in the comedy world here. I don't know if I would have ever met them otherwise. And they're a lot of really cool people that had good laughs and created friendships, which is pretty neat.
I agree, and I think that's the best. One of the best parts for me. The comedy is always great, like when you hear it, when you see it, when you feel it, when you enjoy it together. But man, the friendships I've made, even like with yourself, like with Lakshjeet, with Cole, with Sully, with a bunch of the Jordy, it's all been through comedy. I didn't meet any of you through any other means.
I think I can officially let you know that my wife has dubbed, so the people that did the benefit show, we are the Chuckle Crew.
Oh my, it's like Broken Lizard, but they're the Chuckle Crew.
So when I go out and I come to the club here, I'm gonna see the Chuckle Crew.
It's actually a really cool name.
I think we should get embroidered.
She branded it.
We should get embroidered t-shirts or something.
Man, and pay her a little commission of, But anyways.
Eric has another comment there, if you want to hit that.
Let's see. Oh, it was asterisk hacky comedy life.
Hacky comedy life?
Yeah.
Definitely that's Lakshjeet on his wife's account.
So, on that note though, I think, Brian, I appreciate your time this morning. On a Sunday morning, of course. And just appreciate you for tuning in, share the video, do your thing. We're just going to continue plugging away every week. And just want to say,
What do we have upcoming this week? We talked about that?
This week on Wednesday, we have 50 Shades of Grey's Anatomy trivia, which is, it's gotten some good feedback. We've got our amateur comedy night on Thursdays, and on Friday, it's the roast battle. The roast battle coming up on Friday. So come out, check out the roast battle.
As a participant, I just ask that as many people come out that are not directly related to Lakshjeet, so that we can have a fair roast battle.
We need an absolutely fair roast battle. And then on Saturday, we've got headliner Renee Manners, who will be here, which will be awesome. So outside of that, man, Brian, enjoy your Sunday. Have a great Sunday, everybody.
Cheers.
And a good week. We'll see you later.
All right.
That always happens.